Hi again, everyone, and welcome to Badger Breakdown, brought to you by U.S. Cellular. I'm Mike Lucas for UWBadgers.com. I'm joined by the voice of the Badgers, Matt Lepay. Before we talk about the next installment of the border battle, I think we should go back and take a look at what this defensive unit has been doing. Iowa, BYU, and most recently Indiana, just shutting down people.
Yeah, different styles of play there too. Iowa, more of the what used to be referred to as a traditional, conventional offense, if there's any such thing. But they kept them out of the end zone, and then you play a BYU team that was hot coming in here, slowed them down. Indiana, 28 points or more in 10 straight games, and shut them down. So I think what we're finding out about this defense is that it's really good no matter the style of play, and I think that's a separator with this defense compared to most others in college football today.
And it's really been fun to watch a variety of different players contribute. I mean, we know who the headliners are, and you start with Chris Borland, but there have been so many other players who have come out of the shadows this year.
Well, it could be somebody like Pat Muldoon, who played so well in the game against Iowa. And I know Gary Anderson has talked a lot about Bo Allen. I asked Coach Anderson more than a week ago, I said, who are some guys who statistically, maybe those numbers are lying a little bit? And he mentioned Bo Allen as being one of those guys where there's a frustration level sometimes at times because you're not getting 10 tackles behind the line of scrimmage or 6 or 7 sacks. And Gary said,
it's a different role for those players.
You're doing your job. And then you look in the secondary and the way they've made the parts fit. I know we've talked about it before, but when you see somebody like a Tanner McAvoy getting involved, Nate Hammond, the improvement of players like Sojourn Shelton and Darius Hillary, those were all players that you wondered about. You knew Des Southward was going to be pretty good, and he has been. But the rest of those guys in the secondary, I think, have really improved greatly as the year's gone along.
So we touched on it with the Iowa offense being more conservative, maybe more traditional, more conventional. Let's use that word. Now we see Minnesota. That has some similarities with what Wisconsin likes to do offensively.
It's interesting. Wisconsin has played in the last 2 weeks, BYU and Indiana, 2 teams among the 4 fastest in college football in time between plays, or lack thereof. Minnesota's one of the slowest. Now, one of the similarities that they have with Wisconsin is that you feature the fly sweep. In fact, I know Gary has said that they actually feature it more than Wisconsin does. They'll tease it, they'll use it with a variety of receivers, and they'll do a lot of pre-snap movement, a lot of shifting. Things that we've seen with Wisconsin, very run-based, probably more so at times than Wisconsin. Maybe not overly fancy, but efficient. They don't turn the ball over, which is another big plus that's been in Wisconsin's favor, not just this year, but the past few.
And the one thing a lot of people in the Big Ten probably haven't recognized yet is that the Gophers are on the verge of having a 1,000-yard rusher in David Cobb.
David Cobb, who has been pretty well documented, was really off the radar. He wasn't in the depth chart to begin the season, but he's the last 4 games especially, 100 yards plus, averaging 142 yards on the ground in that stretch. And they have some others. Donnell Kirkwood, Williams is somebody out of the backfield as well, but David Cobb has been the main show in terms of their running game. Behind an offensive line that's had to do a little shuffling. They've had some guys banged up, but it's been pretty effective.
Jerry Kill ran a lot of zone read when he was at Northern Illinois, and now he's doing it likewise with the 2 quarterbacks he has. And it's very unique that the 2 quarterbacks rank number 2 and 3 in rushing. Philip Nelson we saw here last year.
Yeah, and Leitner, the other guy, there's no great difference. Usually if you see 2 quarterbacks, you'll have one who's primarily a thrower and one who's more than a runner. These 2 guys they both have some size to them, and they run it. But if one is in over the other, the offense really doesn't change very much. Nelson has been the guy of late. I know we talked about Cobb being hot. Philip Nelson, when he's thrown it, has thrown it very efficiently, high percentage. They're doing what they need to do offensively. There really isn't much in terms of eye-popping statistics, but they're doing what they need to do, and their defense has been really solid as well.
That's one of the keys. I mean, Rashid Hagman, one of the better players, highest profile players, I think, in terms of the pro personnel scouts in the league.
Yeah, they figure first-round draft pick. Gary Anderson earlier in the week said he's going to be playing for a long time, but stays healthy and all of that stuff. But he's a guy who's going to be very productive at the next level. Brock Vereen's another guy in the secondary. They've moved him around from safety. Now he's a corner, been very versatile in his career. James Manuel, one of their outside linebackers, has been good. They're deep. They'll rotate a lot of players in their defensive line, but Rashid Hagman, number 99, is the player to watch.
And they have all the specialists that you need to be successful and have been successful during this 4-game winning streak with the punter, the place kicker, and the return specialist.
Yeah, well, Peter Mortel, their punter, has been very, very good. It's been, like golf shots, approach shots. He's been able to check up deep inside the opposing territory, inside the 10-yard line. And Chris Hawthorne, their kicker, has been effective as well. And you're right, good kick return game, good effective punt return game. It all has the makings of a good game, which leads us to this week's U.S. Cellular Question of the Week, and it comes from John right here on campus, who wants to know how important is it now that both teams are ranked in the BCS standings. Wisconsin 19th, Minnesota 25th, and Mike, I'd say with the fan bases, this game has always meant a ton for all the obvious reasons. But with both teams being 8-2, both in the top 25, maybe there's going to be a little bit more interest outside of the states of Wisconsin and Minnesota, saying, hey, look at these guys. Good storylines, both schools. This is something that maybe extends beyond Wisconsin and Minnesota.
No, I agree. There'll be more eyes on this game than maybe last year or the year before. I don't know that there can be any more urgency for these two programs, because even if you were in a down year, you looked at this one game, the game against Wisconsin, or if you were on the other side of it, the game against Minnesota, where you could kind of make your season but by finding a way to win.
Yeah, it's the trophy game. It's a poster game. Look, Wisconsin's won this thing 9 times in a row. Minnesota did that to Wisconsin back from 1933 to 1941. So if Wisconsin can win again on Saturday, this is the longest winning streak in this series between these two. I don't know how many points this translates to, but if you're Minnesota, you're tired of seeing the other guy take the parade lap. So I think it's going to be a pretty noisy crowd. I imagine we'll see some Badger red in the house, but be a lot of maroon and gold, and it's going to be a 20-degree day, as the makings, I think, of a heck of a ball.
A classic in this series, and there have been a lot of good games. For Matt Lepay, I'm Mike Lucas. Thanks for watching Badger Breakdown, brought to you by U.S. Cellular.